Good day, mate. Hope you're well. Thank you for your previous week's weekly check-in, man. And from my memory, I think this is going to be the last check-in for the year, I think. To my knowledge, because I know that you mentioned you'll be taking time off from Christmas all the way till the first week of the new year anyway. So yeah, hopefully you guys got some stuff planned for family, friends, parties, whatever it might be, and hopefully your Christmas will be well spent, particularly with having the ability to be in contact with other human beings. So I guess I'll continue off that conversation from last week, I suppose, talking about the whole competing thing. Yeah, I think one of the one of the main reasons I think I kind of spoke about last week was obviously due to the whole fact that I don't want to compete for the sake of competing, but I kind of talked to you, but we kind of went back and forth in a message. It was one of those things where I completely forgot that Commonwealths might potentially be a thing next year. So I also did recall you mentioned that North Islands is down in Wellington. Now, that actually sparked a thought in my head that maybe I should actually do Auckland's instead of doing the North Islands, because traveling during that period of the year, particularly traveling for me during that period of the year, might be a bit dicey just because of work and stuff like that. So, yeah. So if anything, I retract what I said. I think I might actually take up on the offer, if I do end up competing, to do Auckland Champs. Now, I understand that by going along with what I literally just said 5 seconds ago, it means that leading up into Jan, prep is going to basically go into full swing. And I guess it's still kind of that important decision that's in my mind, where I'm still very, in all honesty, in all fairness, sort of statistics aside and all that kind of stuff, I'm still very 50-50 in competing next year. Just because there's just a lot of other sort of external factors that might happen. And I use the word might, they're not certain. So it's kind of just me teetering on the idea of competing or not competing. So, I guess I'll speak in terms of if I were to compete, then I think doing Auckland Champs isn't necessarily going to be that competition where I'm looking to put up big numbers. I think the goal, if I were to complete at Auckland Champs, is literally just to put me in the position to qualify for nationals. Now, on top of my head, if I remember correctly, the qualifying total is 520 for a 66. So if I end up squatting somewhat 170, I pull anything. Okay, that might something along the lines of so 170 to 10. I think it was 520. I can't remember what the qualifying total was. It might be 480. It might be 520. Or it might be 500. I can't remember. But let's assume it's 500, because I know it's kind of high fours, low fives. If I were to say need a qualifying total as a 66 to qualify, if I squat 175, if I pull anything for 205, and I'll literally just have to bench 120, so plus minus give or take, squat 180, pull 210, bench 110, which I've bench a single this week at 110 anyway. It kind of puts me very, very close. I'm not too sure if, but I think the goal, if I were to compete at Auckland Champs, is literally just to qualify. I don't think I'm going in with the intention of being super peaked, because like I said, I think the bulk is going really well, but I don't necessarily want to kind of push it over the moon, so to speak. So that's just kind of my train of thought. If I do end up competing, I do genuinely think I'll be able to put up a total good enough to get me to qualify for nationals. And then just kind of having that conversation again of do we actually do nationals or not? So yeah, that's my train of thought. And just kind of reflecting on what could potentially happen next year. That seems like the more logical option for me, in terms of like timing, if I were to end up competing next year. So yeah, like I said, I think the goal isn't necessarily the total big. It's literally just to put me in position to actually qualify, and going from there, seeing what the year will bring, because got some stuff planned next year, and I'm not too sure what the outcome will be, so I just kind of don't want that competing stress to kind of go into things. But hey, if all goes well, and if things fall into place, who knows? Maybe I'll actually compete more often next year. But Auckland Champs seems to be the direction I might be heading. If I do come back from the Christmas break, and in January my check-in's like, yep, let's fucking do Auckland Champs. So that's my train of thought. Alright, so I've rambled along quite a bit in terms of, like, I guess, competition. Like I said last week, is going to be this ongoing conversation, and I think mulling it over during Christmas period is probably a good option for me, as I kind of like settle down with work and plan out next year's, so to speak. Training, however, has been going really, really well. Squats are coming up pretty nicely. I don't really have too much to kind of say, man, except for squats are coming up pretty nicely. Good poor squats overall. So I'm not going to touch too much on that, which is good. Deadlifts were pretty much kind of like where I like the 190 to be at. I'm happy to kind of say that 190 is kind of like nice and easy weight to kind of like shift. I definitely will want a little bit more pop off the floor with the 190. I think I could do a better job and not fucking around at the bottom too much, like we've kind of talked about with the prep to leading up to nationals this year. So kind of just played around with the positioning here with the 160, and it feels a little bit better. Caveat, of course, this is a much lower weight, and rep work generally doesn't really reflect on singles, because, you know, stretch reflex and all that kind of stuff when you're doing multiple reps of deadlifts. Okay, so this was interesting. If you looked at my logs, the first set of 80 by 10 actually went pretty well. However, and I was like, oh, that actually was pretty hard. I'll just keep it at 80. And funnily enough, as I get to the 8th rep, and you'll see here, I basically went from pretty decent-ish velocity to like literally just sort of like failing. So maybe it was me bitching out, I don't know. And yeah, you can see here from like 0.32 and it literally went to like 0.19, and it like literally halved, and I was like, fuck it, this is not happening. So yeah, I think potentially just maybe adjusting my expectations there. But I'm not going to kind of harp on it too much. I think it's just one of those things where I need to get used to doing a lot more volume feed up, and I think I should be able to come back this week and perform a little bit better. That's all I have to say. I did not attach the VBT to... I did not attach the VBT to this, but for some... No, it attached to the bar, but for some reason the Bluetooth did not connect, but the velocity was recorded, so I popped it down there, popped it down on the sheet, and you'll see that the velocity was pretty much kind of the same as last week, I think, which was good. I think like squats are kind of coming up to a point where I'm pretty happy with where it is. So yeah, look, hopeful to potentially put like 170 next Monday, especially after all that Christmas feed. Yeah, so 150 for 4. Just looking at the linear trend here, I think like 155 is probably where we're at. I know last week we kind of went a little bit back and forth talking about like RPE single at 8 at the velocity. I find that with rep work, it tends to not, like personally, I'll be honest, I haven't really dove too much into literature about velocity for rep work. It does kind of look like rep work's velocity is, for me, it looks very different to velocity for singles. For example, like the bench, that RPE 9 was literally like 0.31 and dropped to like 0.19 and then I failed, whereas the single at 0.19 was fine. So I think maybe I would probably moving forward use the velocity more as a gauge on like the consistency of the sets. So like you'll see, I think with this squat here, I did like 150 for 3 sets of 4. And all the velocity was pretty close, so I didn't necessarily have to like cut the weight down. But on, I think the way I'll probably use it is that if I do see the velocity drop or the velocity go up, then I might adjust accordingly, rather than, as per the single discussion last week, aiming for a ballpark velocity. I think maybe that's the way I'll use it. Highlight was definitely 110 for single here. I know I have been struggling with bench as a whole. And I was pretty happy to hit, 110 for single. Could it have been cleaner? Could it have been paused better? Probably. But I'm just kind of happy, like I'm able to finally hit 110 at a relatively decent speed. And the pec is less niggly now. So I think this high rep protocol, man, is probably the way to go moving forward. It does seem like it. So yeah, 97.5, nothing too much to kind of go through here except for just benching in general. And 145 for 6 here with the conventionals. On the first rep here, I totally forgot. I was like, ooh, I need to have my lockouts a little bit more solid, so try to clean it up a little bit more as the reps go along, because I know you're a man of a strong lockout. Had to adjust my belt here because it was niggly, but yeah. Yep, overall happy, and 85 for 8 here with tag bench. Again, going up in terms of weight, but the speed stayed pretty much the same compared to last week, so it's encouraging to see that the speed is going up. In saying that, it definitely did feel not an RP7. There's the rep work thing here. Like last week, I felt like the velocity, I don't have my log up, but I felt like the velocity was same as this week. However, the weight was heavier, so it felt more difficult in terms of like an RPE scale, or my personal RPE scale, but the speed was constant. I think this is one of those examples where I was like, okay, like the speed is the same, but it definitely felt a little bit more difficult. So yeah, still kind of like tinkering around with how to optimally use the velocity, but I think we're getting a good, well, at least I'm getting a good feel of how to actually manipulate my training load based off the velocity and based off those singles. And in those warm-ups leading up to singles, I do use my VBT as well. I don't put it in the video here, but I do record it down. Because it gives me a good gauge. I'm like, oh, last week it was, a lot quicker, a lot slower, and I can make adjustments there. So, fuck, I've went 13 minutes already, Jesus. So I'll probably wrap it up, man. That's kind of my train of thought at the start with the whole competing thing. Like I said, it's going to be like you said, and like I said, it's probably going to be an ongoing conversation. I'll have a bit of a mull over on Christmas, and it'll probably give me a better indication. But if I do end up competing, it probably will look like something of doing Auckland Champs. And I think the goal isn't necessarily to get first, whatever it might be. If it happens, it happens. But I think the goal for Auckland Champs, it's more so than anything to be able to qualify for nationals, which then opens up the door, I guess, to either go to Commonwealths if it does happen. But if it doesn't, hey, if I don't end up doing nationals, then hey, that's all good as well. At least we've done a comp for the year, and that's kind of where my head's at. So yeah, man, that's all. Hopefully you guys have a good Christmas with you and the family. Hope everyone stays safe, enjoy, and I'll speak to you in the new year. So Merry Christmas to you, Sammy, and everyone else. Happy New Year, and I will speak to you next year.